The planet Seaman Silence was discovered in 2409. In 2461, the world was transferred to the register of the 3rd Directorate of Penitentiary Isolation Colonies. In accordance with the established procedure, the Directorate began transporting criminals with life sentences to the prison world. The Empire keeps watch over the planet and its society of ethnically segregated criminal gangs via Cerberus Station, equipped with sophisticated electronics, high-precision munitions, and a null space portal. The convicts are delivered to Seaman Silence via a disposable landing capsule. That's how we got here. In 2507, the Imperial spooks received intelligence that the convicts are actively assembling a starship. This wasn't their first escape attempt. The Imperial reaction was swift. The reconnaissance and sabotage group Ghoul was sent to Seaman Silence to prevent the illegal starship from being assembled. The Space Marines had a bunch of adventures that got my Planet Alcatraz 1 video demonetized. Having completed their mission, the Marines were evacuated from the prison world. Well, all of them except for one. Sergeant Hartman, the officer in charge of the reconnaissance and sabotage group Ghoul, was missing, presumed dead. But he isn't dead. He is still stranded on the planet, captured by one of the worst criminal gangs of Seaman Silence, the Policeman Gang. And that is the story setup for Planet Alcatraz 2, The Hunt for the Black Rectangle. So, why is this game important? Because it was designed and written by the living avatar of the Soviet Union. You know, we have quite a few auteurs in video games, like Hideo Kojima or Hidetaka Miyazaki. In RPGs specifically, we know and uphold the thought of Tim Kaine, Josh Sawyer, Chris Avellone, Cleve the Caveman, but their influence never seems to escape the gamer spaces. Dmitry Goblin Puchkov is different. He had, and still has, a profound influence on online culture, YouTube, politics. He writes books. He's a political pundit. He is so much more. Puchkov is in the vanguard of a brand of Russian politics that combines leftist aesthetic with far-right ethics. Practically unknown in the West, he is influential anywhere where Russian culture has a presence. I've met Goblin fans in Rudny, Kazakhstan. An older man, born in 1961, Dmitry has been around the block. The game's manual lists some of the jobs he had, from truck driver to criminal investigator, from Kropivnitsky, Ukraine, to Wunsdorf, Germany, to St. Petersburg, Russia. And among other things, he made video games, including systems-heavy crappagers we love so much.
Игровая механика.
The game's mechanics were radically improved compared to Part 1. Now everything works like I initially wanted it to work.
Имеется в виду.
What I mean is that some conventions that supposedly all games of the certain genre have were removed. What he means is that there is no leveling, not unless you choose to enable it. The protagonist, Sergeant Hartman, is a fully developed person and essentially the author's self-insert. He is tough, smart, proficient with all kinds of weapons, and he had political training. The sergeant's hit points do not increase. He experiences no level-ups during his prison adventures. The game absolutely mocks the nerd concepts.
Поклонникам жанров.
To the fans of genres, I'll tell you straight away that this product is not about canon or conventions. Actually, I'm gonna contradict Dmitry here. Planet Alcatraz plays like an even jankier version of an Infinity Engine type of a game. In the mid-2000s, we were plagued by projects with interesting concepts, ruined by bad implementation of RTWP combat, and this is very much one of them. Planet Alcatraz 2 is not available in English, so spoiler warnings are irrelevant. Let's get into it. Our protagonist is trapped in the policeman camp.
Ефрейтор Хартман?
Ефрейтор Hartman? Air Assault Brigade Deadhead? Welcome to the real world. Hartman doesn't recognize his old buddy Zhdanov.
Планета Ракада 4.
I'll give you a hint. Planet Rokada 4, the fight against the Velian scum. Come on, soldier. We ate from one pot. We picked lice off each other. The situation here is different. You're our prisoner. Well, my prisoner. They wanted to cut your throat, but I saved you. You have nowhere to run, so I propose you cooperate. We are the police force of Seaman Silence. We work on establishing law in this shithole so that the planet can one day become civilized. Zhdanov introduces us to his second-in-command. Lieutenant Crook is a shit human being, but he does his job better than anyone else, so he was elevated. He floated up into power. The game has a distinct mid-2000s technology look. The characters' faces are more detailed now, and there are facial animations, although they are not exactly Source Engine tier. Powered by the 3D engine, The Engine. The visuals were improved compared to the original Planet Alcatraz, but this comes with an important caveat. The prettiest parts of the game are the new locations, and there are very few new locations. We will mostly be revisiting the familiar places. However, in perfect conditions, in the correct time and place, and if the camera angle is just right, the game can be borderline beautiful. But alas, Planet Alcatraz has a rotatable camera, so you'll always be observing stuff at a wrong angle, and it actually ends up looking like ass. I wonder what this is foreshadowing. The first step in our space cop career is taking a bath.
Заходи, брат.
Come in, brother. We won't hurt you. He's right, they won't. Not in Goblin mode. The sauna scene provides us with an opportunity to examine Hartman's physique. I suppose he is big from the point of view of a normal person, but he certainly isn't a strength or a physique athlete. Nothing about him screams enhancement. For a power fantasy self-insert, this is tame.
Кто с***л шмотки?
We got robbed. Someone replaced our bum clothes with sexy clothing worn by homosexuals and prostitutes. A Marine is ashamed to wear this, says the game. We can run around naked as much as we want. The weather is just special effects. Coincidentally, one of the new features of the sequel is that the game now has fewer women. Prison planets are gender segregated. Instead of women, the streets are now populated by homosexuals. In the game's promotional material, Hartman is portrayed as having a masculine, chad-like appearance. But in the actual adventure, he looks very different. And the same is true for the protagonist of the original game, Cadet Caban. They are not attractive people. They look very un-Hollywood-like. Soviet movies also had this quality. Anyways, eventually Hartman finds the policeman who stole his clothes and physically dismantles them while completely naked without breaking a sweat. I am not locked here with you. You are locked here with me. We have full freedom to navigate the base, do side quests, and commit crimes. If caught, Hartman finds himself inside a jail cell, but then is quickly released by Lieutenant Crook. Zhdanov is our guardian angel. The main story continues. Our next mission is to clean the toilet, but there is a problem.
Где, б***ь?
Who took the shovel for clearing fecal materia? A prisoner has an answer to this question. His name is Fritz, and he talks in a Russian stereotype of a German accent. That's because he's apolitical. The Empire is waging a space war against the Fourth Reich, which has spread its tentacles over almost a third of the galaxy. An important bit of lore of Alcatraz verse is that Aryan and white are two different things.
Сюрприз.
The game inherited a major flaw of the original Planet Alcatraz, and that is quest design. A great number of missions are basically fetch quests. You talk to a guy, he sends you to talk to another guy, he sends you to talk to the third guy, quest complete. About half of the quest content is just this. The writing makes it tolerable, but you know, the game isn't exactly a hidden gem obfuscated by a language barrier. But not all quests are hopeless. We get to do fun stuff too, like rescue a doggy from rat wolves, or catch a thief stealing from the warehouse.
Привет.
Oh yeah, that's another thing that changed. The game has memes now. This specifically is a reference to Bear Surprise, which was originally a painting by the American artist John Luara. It depicts a couple having sex in a meadow. There is a bear standing in front of them. With the paws above its head, it says, "Surprise!" John Luara wasn't thinking about this when he created the painting, but this is possibly the first ever Russian language internet meme. It was everywhere in the late 2000s. I got banned from the EVE Online CAOD message board for posting it in 2009. Now, this is something the game doesn't do a good job communicating, but we have a major choices and consequences moment ahead that will determine who will be our first companion and how we'll be leaving the policeman camp. We have to either rescue Dersu the Hunter or Fritz the Aryan. Whoever we pick joins the party, and the other guy is executed by a firing squad.
Цельсь. Пли!
Dersu is a character inspired by a real person, Dersu Uzala, a Siberian native trapper and a hunter, possibly of Nanai tribe. There is a 1975 Soviet-Japanese film about the man, directed and co-written by Akira Kurosawa. I picked Dersu in my test run. I liked his skill set better. He specializes in long-range rifles, and this is easier to manage with the game's not very good implementation of RTWP combat.
Тут кто-то 3 дня назад помочился.
But I got confused because I can't tell what this accent is supposed to be. No Asian person I've ever met talks like this. The Fritz quest chain is more fun. The first step in the escape plan is to get the policeman shit-faced. Hartman gives a short speech. I am convinced that a planet of criminals has to be ruled by policemen. This needs to be our state. A police state. Grab and never let go, gentlemen. Cheers. But this was a wrong dialogue option to pick. Zhdanov will coldly inform us that if we like the police so much, we should fuck off to the Fourth Reich. And then they'll kill us, because the policemen are patriots who uphold imperial law. The conversation tree needs to be carefully navigated. And if you pick all the correct dialogue options,
Давим эту мразь!
just as planned. Then we get the Flamethrower from the warehouse and rescue Fritz, who hid a critical piece of Aryan Flamethrower technology inside his anus. It's been there for weeks. Oh, the things you do to prevent the mongrel dogs of the Empire from obtaining classified tech.
Наша Уберwaffe в
Now you'll see our superweapon in action.
Операцию «Жареный полицай».
Commencing Operation Fried Polizei. We have to protect Fritz as he works on the lock to the gate.
Начинаю уничтожать.
This takes no effort whatsoever, as the policemen are drunk and unarmed. We made it! Fritz says we should head to the Fourth Reich fortress of Kreuzweiberg.
Братан,
Bro, you'll be gladly accepted into the Aryan army. But Hartman has other plans. We're going to the capital. Located at the mouth of the river Stinky, Severny, or the Northern City, is the largest, the most multinational and multicultural settlement on the planet. The manual says there is no centralized management and administration, but if I recall, our friend Blackie used to serve that function. What happened to him? The areas of the city are no longer gated behind story events. We can freely visit the Black, the Sino-Japanese, and the White districts. During the events of Planet Alcatraz 1, the city had around 7,000 inhabitants. This number should be a little lower now. The wiki describes the race relations like this. In general, blacks hate yellows and whites, yellows hate blacks and whites only hate whites, not considering representatives of other races worthy of hatred. But everyone hates Aryans. Criminals, who make up the majority of the planet's population, despise political prisoners and try to kill them at the first opportunity. That's what the documentation says. And this is the exact opposite of how it was within the actually existing Soviet prison culture. Mr. Puchkov is famous for disliking Soviet political dissidents, to put it mildly. Hartman tells Fritz to ditch his shirt with Aryan markings. Good advice, the locals will react with threats if they see someone wearing it. Oh my god, they have Caravan on Planet Alcatraz. Actually, it's a card game called 21, and it's a version of Blackjack. The Russian name for it is Skor, or Ochko, which also happens to be a Soviet slang term for asshole. There is a gambling establishment nearby called Happy Score. But that's not the only way of translating it. You get it? It's a prison planet. The reason for us being in the northern city is to make contact with the Imperial informant who will hopefully tell us what to do next. The problem is, we don't know anything about the informant except that he is a priest. So Act 2 is us doing a bunch of jobs for local priests trying to find the right guy. In case you were wondering, yes, the sequel remembers and reacts to the unspeakable things we did in the first game. This priest converted a maiden, a sex worker, to true faith, so she left the Asian brothel. The owners didn't like that, so they imprisoned the priest until the woman comes back. Unfortunately, the maiden fell back into the life of debauchery and is now working in a brothel brothel in the White People district. Yes, it's the same familiar place. The brothel converted to a men's bathroom by private Caban, converted back to a brothel. The maiden we rescue is a returning character as well.
Хартман, как хорошо, что ты меня нашел.
It's good that you found me. It's rare to meet a real man in this place. I've only loved one person in my life. I thought I'd never get to experience those feelings again.
Что же это за любовь?
And who was that love of yours?
Наверное, полгода назад.
Half a year ago, the brothel was invaded by a strong and ferocious fighter. His manners and his way with women was similar to yours. I partook in colorful sexual experiences with this man.
Но ни на что джигитскую.
I have a boyfriend, but he is not a jigit. He is very dull. Jigit is a Turkic word for a brave and young person. In the Soviet boomer culture, it was used to describe someone who is masculine. The boyfriend, who happens to be the manager of the brothel, marches in.
Ах ты, сучка! Пошла в лярва чесоточная!
You, bitch! Get the fuck out of here, you scabies larva! I sacrificed my life to be on this planet with you, and you talk shit about me to random strangers. This is the direct continuation of the boyfriend quest from the first game. Anya wants to travel with us, but Hartman's job is too dangerous. He says he might return for her once all of this is over. He gives his word.
Слово джигита.
A word of a jigit. This is the first in a series of quests where the priests jerk us around and waste our time. Goblin is very anti-religion IRL. Eventually we meet our contact by randomly bumping into him in the market. The priest says the code phrase, "Count the number of the beast, my son, for it is the number of a man." Hartman gives the coded response. I can only count to 10. Feels good to be finally working with Imperial professionals. The Town Hall. The wanted poster portrays a member of the strike team Ghoul from the first game.
Отлично.
And here is our old friend Blackie, an Imperial intelligence officer on Seaman Silence. There is a reason I'm here, Hartman. I solve problems. Look how many people I control. Blacks, yellows, whites, gray, brown, raspberries. They all hate each other. My job is to prevent infighting. And in order to do that, I need to have authority. What Blackie is getting at is that he is required to look the part. He needs good clothes. Do I look like a fashion designer? Asks Hartman. Do I look like someone who can mistake you for a fashion designer? The first quest of Act 3 involves exploring the world map in order to collect 3 animal skins so that Blackie can make white fur underpants out of them. The world map design is completely different in the sequel. We explore Seaman Silence sector by sector. The game generates static and mobile encounters, and sometimes they go after each other. Instead of being unlocked at the set points of the main quest, we can now find most settlements simply by exploring the world map, like in a classic Fallout game. But that's not what the influence was. This design was inspired by the ancient Korovans meme, one of the foundational elements of the early Russophonic gamer culture. Planet Alcatraz 2 makes a reference to it in the documentation. The meme was conjured into being by the Fallout community, specifically by the crew of the IRC channel Fallout on some server in the early 2000s. IRC is what we had before Discord. Back then, one of my obsessions was the man named Vitaly Shutov, a Russian video game auteur with the same ethics as Goblin, but half the gray matter. The joke originated from this letter sent to Shutov from an excited fan describing his dream game, a 3D action where you can play as forest elves, palace guards, or a villain. And if the player plays as elves, then the soldiers of the palace and villains attack, and you can rob trading caravans. The humor is lost in translation, but essentially the word caravan was misspelt with an O, which is a common way for a Russian to misspell words. This created instant comedy. Korovans became a catchphrase, our internal community meme we would spam when a video game developer did something stupid, which was often, like Mr. Shutov made an off-brand Jagged Alliance 3. That was the most Korovans shit ever. We had all kinds of people in the Fallout IRC crew. Arthur here is American. We had individuals from No Mutants Allowed, some people from the Russian message boards, and a bunch of indie devs. Eventually our local meme broke containment moment when someone posted it on an IRC quotes aggregator. And from then on, it quickly conquered the internet, becoming yet another chapter in the story of the Fallout community contributing to online culture. We did so much, except for our job, which was figuring out how Fallout works. Anyways, the original poster of the word salad can be credited with essentially designing the planet Alcatraz world map system. The game wants us to go see Blackie alone, so Fritz will have to wait in the Happy Score Casino. An important story cutscene.
Уважаемый,
Sir, in my office you have to remove that pillowcase from your face.
Теперь это мой.
It's my office now, you eggplant. Blackie, no!
Энди Хох?
The robbed individuals disarm us. And then this guy chops off Blackie's head as a trophy. Hartman and Click, or Fang, Blackie's second in command, wake up in a shack on the edge of town. Yeah, it's been a while since I slept with a man on the same bed, especially with a Negro. Fang explains the plot of the game. You see, Blackie had a Neuralink type of device in his head that allowed for communication with the Cerberus station in orbit. The device has an external interface we can use to make a phone call to the Empire so that they come and get us off the planet. So that's the plan. Find Blackie's head, extract the device, and then call in the cavalry. I guess we should recover our clothes first, but that's not very hard. Both Fang and Hartman are melee specialists. This is a ring fighting segment, an RPG trope. Since in Goblin mode Hartman starts at max level, it's not much of a challenge. Nothing can take you, I see. You will go against two fighters. They are experienced. Watch your back. So they are afraid to fight face to face. This is good. Morally, I have already won. The arena quests are how we gain respect of the Northern City criminal authorities. The real power on Seaman's silence. They might know where Blackie's head is. You can see the general outline of, well, we can call it the image board character party. Everyone is very racist, but also strangely multi-ethnic.
Мое почтение.
The big city businessman is buying gas canisters from the Aryans.
Зикаль.
This scene got me thinking. Imagine Goblin getting $100 million from the government to make a Baldur's Gate 3 version of this. How would that look like? Some say we, white people, oppress blacks. We can be cruel, arrogant. Perhaps there is some truth to that, but we strive to become better. Hartman goes on a racist rant about how he showed respect to mutagen, but the black man didn't appreciate it, leaving Hartman no choice but to get into the cruel white man mindset. And then he describes how he would hang mutagen by the genitals, which initiates combat. The context for this is that we are doing a branch of the main quest that references the Soviet kids miniseries Visitor from the Future. That's the stuff you watch with your parents when you are 10. This is an excellent segue into my favorite chapter of Goblin studies. You see, back in 2006, these games were progressive. One of the individuals in our Fallout IRC crew was working at this company. 2006, we are meeting at a bar in Moscow. I'm informing him that I'm playing the new RPG they made, Planet Alcatraz. He looks at me like I said something rude. The commentariat reviled Goblin, and it wasn't because of his politics or ethics. It was because the media he made was about the culture of the underclass, the culture of convicts, gangsters, military, the low-status culture. Back then, there was still hope for the Vatniks. There was still hope that they can change the world for the better. The movement was at the crossroads. Make your choice, Mr. Puchkov. You can either control the explosive energies of nationalism and channel them for the cause of liberation, sort of like a Soviet Black Panther, an old and potent technique, or you can do that weird Russian shit, like Protocols of Elders of Zion, but it's about the English Queen for some reason. One interesting feature of the game's otherwise bad and stupid combat are the AI settings. Turn unit aggression to maximum and the battles play themselves, assuming you have the advantage in equipment. It appears the white people are at it again. They built a destroyer. The ship is designed to perform mining operations in the aquatorium of the river Stinky, the captain explains. Attempts were made to go on punitive raids into the colored areas of the city. The results were mixed. In order to improve its effectiveness, the destroyer was equipped with a cannon battery. The weapon was tested by shooting the yellow districts. None of the cannonballs reached the shore. The funding for the project was suspended. The ship is how we get to the mysterious island, a rare new location. This wasn't in Planet Alcatraz 1. There are suspiciously many new assets, probably reused from another game. Hartman finds a tinfoil hat and makes contact with the ancient god of the island. If you are confused by this, yeah, everyone was. 2008 was about when the Russians learned of the existence of Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos. The cultist incantations became a meme. There is no real depth to this story. They were funny because they were new and exotic. The ancient creature attempts to boss us around, but Hartman ain't a common cultist. He demands upfront cash payment for whatever quests Cthulhu wants us to do. Don't make me angry, little rat. I don't know what your name is, but you are being rude. Goodbye. Cthulhu is the act boss, the first hard battle of the game. I had to reload an earlier save and get better equipment. A whirlwind attack. Special attacks are a new feature. Congrats, Hartman, you did it. He wakes up in a psychiatric hospital.
Что, опять втулку в танк?
What's wrong with your face? Dissatisfied with the progress of the main quest, the game's villain barges in to explicitly tell us what to do next. The game describes the individual as tall and athletic, and that Hartman remembers seeing the man before.
Здравствуйте, доктор.
Curiously, Cape, as the game calls him, is voiced by Puchkov. I killed Blackie because he was misbehaving. From the implant in his head, I learned many curious things. I know who you are. I know you want to escape Seaman's silence. I can send an SOS signal via the implant, and an Imperial shuttle will pick you up. In exchange, Cape wants us to retrieve the device called the Black Rectangle. The device is kept in a heavily guarded gulag fortress called Promzona, the first major location we explored and escaped from in the original Planet Alcatraz. In order to successfully assault the gulag, Cape says we should join the Aryans. These days, they basically take everyone who is at least a little bit white. The second biggest settlement on the planet is the Teutonic fortress of Kreuzweiberg. The game has a genius soundtrack. It's like they found a musician who plays the Soviet criminal chanson and forced them to listen to Baldur's Gate 2 music. Can you make something like this, with the same structure, the main theme, location themes, combat tracks, but the events take place on a Soviet prison planet, so it needs to have elements of Blatnaya Pesnya. Da, blядь, sure. White people music. Asian. Black. I'll put a curated selection of tracks on our Patreon file server. Coloreds are not allowed into the fortress, so Fang will have to wait in the northern city. Which is fine, we have to go back anyway, since the first quest the Aryans give us is recruiting a sharpshooter from the White District. He joins as a temporary companion, and he's okay, I guess. The Nazi general we rescue seems to be glad to see him.
Ты героический арийский воин.
You are a heroic Aryan warrior. Once we are in Kreuzweisberg, I'll make you an offer you can't refuse.
Мне нацизм глубоко чужд.
Nazism is deeply alien to me. My dad died fighting you, freaks.
Scheiße.
Shit, you do not understand your benefit.
Тебя чё?
The new recruit threatens to, quote, create smoke signals to attract sultry Negroes if the Nazi won't shut up.
Hartman, убивает этот вонючий Scheiße. Ликвидиert.
Unfortunately, this is the main quest, and we are offered no choice but to kill the guy.
Больно, но быстро.
Back at the fortress, Officer Iceman is not happy about this either. It is because of people like you. Some doubt the superiority of white race. Once the officers trust us, it doesn't take long for Hartman to convince them of the necessity of attacking the gulag. The northern city mafiosos are getting too numerous and industrialized. Hartman proposes a multi-stage lightning assault operation that hopefully wouldn't lead to a prolonged conflict. Phase 1. Secret weapons of the Fourth Reich. The steam-powered flame tank. There is an ancient way of taking a fortification. We must assemble a life-size wooden model of the Aryan flame tank and leave it next to the prom zona entrance. Very funny, Hartman. Picking this option leads to a game over screen. The problem with the Flampanzer is that it doesn't have enough fuel for the flame gun. But we do know where to get fuel. The African settlement in the northern mountains. Unfortunately, the locals outmaneuver the Aryan squad. This could have been bad, but Hartman diffuses the situation by skillfully negotiating with the African leader, promising to go after his enemies. The Reich intelligence reports that above all else, the winter Africans hate the urban Africans from the northern city. Sectarian differences. Our frenemy Cape shows up with a policeman squad, but once he learns that we are getting oil for the Aryan war machine, they leave. I am making you responsible for field testing our new Flampanzer superweapon, says Iceman. The machine will be trialed in the nearby village of ganja growers.
La pumba unduk. Samba pumba unduk. Hach, hach, hach.
You know, this game makes fun of everyone, whites, Nazis, the religious, but it seems to be extra cruel to black people and to East Asians. This is possibly due to the lack of exposure. Back when this was made, living in Russia's most multi-ethnic city, you might meet 1 or 2 black people a year. There is no actual gameplay. The field test is basically one long cutscene. There is a medal waiting for us back at the fortress. For valor in a tank battle. Phase 2. Iceman's Power Armor Core. After the events of the first game, the Wehrmacht lost many of its power armor suits. This sucks, we could have used them in the assault. Hartman and the crew travel all over the planet to reclaim the lost armor. One of the suits is found in the underground fortress of the mountain people, who I assume are a stand-in for Chechens. So, a rare depiction of Muslims in the game. Phase 3. The Last Express. The Gulag is directly connected to the white people district of the northern city via a railroad, so we hijack a train. The game established the Aryan flame-throwing Uber technology early, so I assumed it would be used in the climax. It is not. The purpose of the Flampanzer is to increase the weight of the train so that it could perform its function as a battering ram. And that's how we get into the industrial heart of the Gulag. This is honestly very funny and clever, and so is the lightning war of the extremely slow-moving Power Armor Core. The residents of the industrial zone are numerous and heavily armed. A difficulty spike, but this was mostly my fault. I never filled that final character slot, so the party isn't operating at full capacity.
Резко кинули стволы и встали раком.
Drop your guns and bend over. Those who won't surrender will be drowned in their own fecal matter.
Тебе молиться надо.
You should be praying instead of swearing. Now you can't go to heaven. Electrical troops, to battle! The convicts are armed with Tesla guns. They stun on hit, possibly a Red Alert reference. The fight needs to be carefully managed so that all the dangerous enemies are incapacitated via criticals. Just a normal black rectangle. It's nothing out of the ordinary, says the game. Oh yeah, this ain't over.
Привет, Хартман.
Hello, Hartman. Congratulations on a successful operation. Cape gives us Blackie's head, and Hartman gives him the rectangle, and we go our separate ways. Cerberus, this is Ghoul 1. Over. Ghoul 1, welcome back. Nobody believed you were still alive. I too am happy I didn't croak. He still might. The command orders us to chase Cape. Back to the policeman camp, the final battles of the game. The Alcatraz cops have rebuilt after the events of the prologue. We revisit the old areas and kill every single person in each one of them, including all the regular prisoners they use as shock troops. This is Johann Weiss. In the first game, he was an Imperial spy embedded into the Aryan fortress, kind of like their version of Blackie. I don't remember him. The latter half of Planet Alcatraz 1 was a sequence of miserable fetch quests that were immediately flushed from memory. Anyways, eventually the Aryan counterintelligence found him out, and the Imperial spy had to escape. Blackie's head is ringing. Ghoul 1, this is Ghoul 2. Over. The Imperial reinforcements have arrived. Shoot the ugly people at the big gate.
Разведгруппа упырь.
The reconnaissance and sabotage group Ghoul is at your disposal, sir. Commanding the group is Private Caban.
Я уже, правда, не сержант.
Actually, I am no longer a sergeant. The Aryans made me Unterofficer. Be afraid, subhumans. The squad are our player characters from the first game plus one extra. They give Hartman a suit of Imperial armor, and we descend into the policeman vault. Weiss shows the way. The final dungeon. Hartman was provided with an infantry railgun, a heavy rifle, and enough ammo to fire them indiscriminately. He starts the game with the Imperial weapon skill maxed out. There are tons of assets here never seen anywhere else. And a Robocop reference. This is so meme. The railgun has absolutely nuts range and it shoots through enemies. Hartman's original squad clears half of the dungeon and the other half is cleared by the strike team Ghoul. We found Cape, but he is a hologram. What? Where is the real Cape? Here he is.
Ну, наконец-то.
Finally! We are tired of telling jokes to each other. I have one condition. Do what I ask and he'll live. The hostage is the pilot of the Imperial aircraft behind them. Cape is Johann Weiss. The reveal might have hit harder if I actually remembered who he was. Weiss demands to be evacuated to the part of the planet that's outside of the Cerberus coverage. And once he's there, he intends to use the black rectangle to send a signal to the Fourth Reich fleet so they can come and pick him up. Says he has valuable intel on the Empire.
Черныш.
Blackie was supposed to evacuate me off planet, but he did nothing.
Здесь ты прав.
Yeah, he didn't like white people. You should have given him a pair of fur underpants. You would have been friends. The endgame choice. We can order Kruger to shoot and kill Cape, or to incapacitate him, so that he could be taken alive, as per Cerberus instructions. Shot in the balls. The pilot's call sign is Fluffy, by the way. We say our goodbyes to the loyal comrades Fritz and Click.
Ну что, хлопцы,
Listen, boys, it's time for us to go, and you can come with us. They won't take you into the special forces, although it is my opinion that you'll fit right in, but even in an engineering battalion, life is better than here.
тут как сказать?
Well, it's like this. The climate on this planet sucks shit and there is no toilet paper. But the people here are good, and you can do whatever you want. The law here is ours, not the Empire's. We are no cops. We live under our own rules. So, thanks, but maybe you want to stay with us? Oh, that's so nice of him to say. I wish I found the Asian companion so that we could have a full image board character party. The Black Rectangle. I guess the title is the reference to the Hunt for Red October. Doesn't really make any sense. That's the ion cannon on the Cerberus station. Hartman got promoted to Master Sergeant. Caban, Fluffy, and others were rewarded with paid leave. Planet Alcatraz 2. A sweet ending, despite the writer dramatically overestimating how much we care for some C-tier character from the first game. So what did we learn from this? Can love bloom on the battlefield? Oh, I just noticed this in editing. Hartman didn't keep his word to Anya. Said he'll come back for her, but didn't. Makes you think. Maybe he's not a good person.
Слово джигита.
Puchkov is such a strange man. Why is he like this? The Planet Alcatraz games, released in 2006 and 2008, are a snapshot of a culture that was in a process of asserting itself. In the next few years, the Vatniks would displace the old intelligentsia, eventually chasing many of them from the country. And speaking of things that are off-country, I've been recently contacted by the administration of the town of Kropivninsky. That's the modern name of Kirovograd, the place in Ukraine Goblin was born in. They watched my Planet Alcatraz 1 video, and they must have been very impressed. They sent me a package to pass on to you, Dmitry. They say it's a medal for valor in culture wars. It's quite heavy, must be made out of precious metal. Before we get to patron credits and the final review bits, a little announcement. I'm writing a book on the early RPG history in this part of the world. It's a little side project I've been occupied with for about a year now. I got obsessed with this idea when I discovered that much of the early RPG history seems to be communicated word to mouth. So that's something coming next year, and I can repurpose some of the chapters for video scripts. What I'm saying is that you should give me all your money via the crowdfunding platform Patreon, link in the description. These videos are made possible by our patrons, including Jim Lawrence, Kyle Shadow Simmons, Snafu, I Feed My Parrot Chicken, Dmitry Yu, Darkbot Pumpkin, Frog, Source is the best engine ever made, Billy Strayhorn. My next video will be on I Divine Cybermancy, 1967 Ford Mustang, Elliot You Idiot, Miracle Moses Porter, Eric Luitkihans, Ganso Bomber Motherfucker, Yuri Solodovnichenko, Tony Spagoni, C6, Danny Kilpatrick, Ilya Rubin, Azazel and Baneful the Doggo, Gang Warfare Enthusiast, Buck Swope, Ray Ners, Nathan Kabiska, and a two-room apartment in Bobruisk, Belarus alt. It would have been funnier if they resolved the final confrontation via a game of Ochko, like in the New Vegas mod Fallout The Frontier, unironically one of the best Fallout mods ever. Curiously, I noticed that the Planet Alcatraz manual describes the game as an isometric RPG. You know how on CV's channel they have a count of sewer levels in FPSs? We should do the same but for games that are isometric. That is, they're not isometric at all, but most individuals don't actually know what that means, and the word is used colloquially to mean any sort of top-down camera. And we should embrace this. Much of the nerd terminology is misused technical terms or words that don't have a clear definition, but possess a positive connotation. This makes them impractical for describing features of video games, that is, impractical for the purposes of analysis and philosophy, the functions they're supposed to serve, but they make for excellent marketing language. This is good because individuals who make RPGs are material beings who have material needs. They have to put food in their face in order to sustain themselves and to sustain the culture. So if you are making an indie role-playing game, make sure that everyone visiting your Steam page knows that they're looking at an isometric CRPG with a focus on role-playing, choices and consequences, and reactivity. Inspired by Fallout, Baldur's Gate, and Planet Escape Tournament. Unleash the word salad. By the way, the isometric Planet Alcatraz looks like this. I believe it's an early prototype. The screenshots didn't come with a description. Curious fact, from 2014 to 2015, Puchkov was a member of the Public Council under the Ministry of Culture of the Russian Federation, where he acted as an expert in assessing film scripts applying for government funding. These days, they're way more serious about video games, so that could actually happen. Alcatraz Gate 3. The New Year video will be the most requested game on this channel. It's time.